Hey, we have great seats here and in front, please. So you don't have to wait there in the backs. Come bravely forward. Wonderful. We are missing one panelist, as you can see, but she will come a little bit later, so we can start now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear YEPP friends. Warm welcome to our distinguished guests. President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, welcome. Roberta is our longtime friend of Finnish Kokoomus party and its Brussels branch. Thank you for coming here tonight. Another long-time friend, Secretary General of the YEPP party, Mr. Antonio López-Istúriz White. Dear Tono, welcome warmly. From the younger side of the YEPP, we are still waiting Ms. Lidia Pereira, from the President of the YEPP, our Portuguese MEP. And here we have Henna Virkkunen, our Finnish Kokoomus MEP. Warm welcome to you, Henna. And I am Pete Pakarinen, chairman of the BKS, the Kokoomus Brussels branch, and I will be hosting you tonight and moderating the debate. As you know already, Petteri Orpo is not able to come here tonight. His mission was to take Finland into NATO, and Parliament voted on this just, let me see, 2-3 hours ago. So he couldn't take a flight. But on behalf of Petteri, I have a few words that he wrote and sent me for you to read. The questions of European democracy and decision-making are extremely relevant today. The war the Russia started in Ukraine raises the question of resilience of EU, functioning of our institutions. The conference on the future of Europe has just ended, and referring to its conclusions, the Parliament calls for the convening of convention by activating the procedure for the revision of the treaties. Finland has been keen on introducing qualified majority votes in the Council, and for coalition party that is and has been a central importance for a long time. This has also been evident in the Finnish government's latest report on Finland's EU policy lines. This regards especially the fields of EU's common foreign and security policy. Nevertheless, the government has not shown much activity here. Although this does not necessarily mean opening the treaties, we as coalition parties strongly support to open the discussion in the EP and in the Council. A clear picture of the need to amend the unanimity demands an open and thorough discussion. For this part, I am nevertheless relieved about the fact regarding Finland's and Europe's overall security, that today's vote in the Finnish Parliament on Finland joining NATO showed. It has 188 votes in favor. This is a huge milestone for improving Finland's security, anchoring us more deeply amongst Western democracies, where we have been this far politically since 1995. In today's Europe and beyond, security is ever more important. But the fact here remains still, as written in the Finnish Foreign Affairs Committee's report about Finland's security environment, is that the EU is Finland's most important channel of influence and policy making. As the European elections 2024 are getting closer, the discussion on pan-European lists and Spitzenkandidat is slowly rising. The coalition party fully share the Finnish Foreign Affairs Committee's view that about the importance of EU to Finland. Would pan-European list then improve the EU? And how? EU can't and does not want to force itself upon people. The Historic Conference on the Future of Europe is a clear representation of this. As was the conference's approach, the coalition party sees no valid reason why the election about Europe's future should not stem from the same source to bring about a more European interest and turnout. A transnational election campaign would work as a possibility to put more pan-European approach to Europe. A central role here belongs to the national parties. They are the known and felt national institutions from which people grant their mandates to power. Making the European parties more close requires a connecting link. That link is the national parties. Like this, the problem of different levels in EU, a natural state level and a distant technocratic European level, would be gradually diminished. These are just some of the questions to raise tonight in the discussion. So I wish you all a fruitful night and discussion for looking at European Democracy 2025. Yours, Petteri Orpo. Thank you. And now, dear Roberta, floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Petter. How much time do I have?
All the time.
I have a 14-minute version and a 16-minute version. Thanks to Antti Timonen. I'll see how much I get through. So thank you very much, Petter, and good evening to you all, dear Tono, dear Henna, dear members and friends of Kokoomus and the EPP, dear participants. I have been a long-lasting activist also of your party and your family, and it is why it's a great pleasure for me to attend this Europe seminar of Kokoomus and its Brussels chapter BKS. When I was asked to speak here alongside with Petteri Orpo, I didn't hesitate for a second, because I know not only from home but also from my friends that it is the people of Kokoomus that have always been at the forefront of the EU's policy in Finland. It is a pity that he couldn't make it here in the end, but as you've just said, Finland's parliament historic NATO accession vote that has been discussed in my family for a very, very long time is the best possible reason for the chairman of the Defence Committee to stay in Finland today. Finland and Sweden in its footsteps have shown admirable determination and cool-headedness in their preparations to join NATO. We know that they are long-time NATO partners and will be security contributors in Northern Europe and the Baltic Sea area. And therefore, I would not be surprised to see a swift accession process. It has been admirable also how both Alex Stubb and Jyrki Katainen have taken an active role in the international fora to support your President and Prime Minister on this important the military alliance, but it's about complementing and being able to do that by bringing all our resources together, as we have incredibly done over the past months, where we either said we couldn't or simply we didn't want to. So for the European Union to remain credible and exert its influence globally, I think we have to remain principled. This is our strength, because for autocrats and despots, the EU is a threat simply by existing. And we know that Ukrainian citizens are not only fighting for their homeland, but they are fighting to preserve what are ultimately our own common values, whether it's freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. How many times have we heard these words? But in a country, on our continent, there is a whole population that is fighting every day simply for the guarantee of those fundamental principles. And this is why we opened our borders to 5.7 million Ukrainians. Wherever you go, you find Ukrainian students in schools. Our own children and my children have Ukrainian kids in their classes. I visited a school in Tallinn last week where there was simultaneous interpretation between Estonian and Ukrainian. This is why we have enacted strong sanctions against Putin and his allies. Not all of them fully enforced everywhere. Clear? That's why we continue to deliver humanitarian aid and weapons to Ukraine. It took us way too long to do that efficiently and effectively. And it remains our duty to support Ukraine in all possible ways. From our end, the European Parliament is taking no half measures. I have always looked at the European Parliament as that institution that needs to, let's say, go a little bit of a step further. We are political representatives. We are there to make laws, but we are also there to be the beacon of hope and the symbolism that a democracy and parliamentary diplomacy stand for. And when I got elected on the 18th of January, and within a few weeks we needed to take a decision as to whether we would go immediately to say, first of all, Russian banks need to be de-SWIFTed. Secondly, we need to make sure that we do not depend anymore on Russian gas and oil in Europe. Why did we say it? We were questioned. Why now? Why quickly? Wait. But my answer was, at the moment, we are de facto financing Russian atrocities committed on Ukrainian soil. And are we ready to understand that? And more importantly, are we ready as political representatives to explain it? And what I have seen, and this has been a phenomenon or something that I would never have imagined, again, a few months ago. My experience of decision-making at European level is leaders getting together in a sometimes less than transparent manner, emerging from a very long meeting with 27 different versions of what they think is reality. Today, it's the opposite. Because today it's those same leaders who are around the table saying, do you know what? I can't go back home and say that I've done nothing to help Ukraine. So I need to go further. And I'm ready to go further. Now, is it easy? Absolutely not. This sanctions, their enforcement, full enforcement, as I said before, full enforcement also by countries that would like to join the European Union, also important. These sanctions will hurt Putin, but we must also be ready to have the cost that is paid by our countries. I think it is a cost that we must bear at this turning point in history. I think it is a price that we must be willing to pay with concrete decision-making, with difficult decision-making, but also with making sure that our citizens don't only understand and are communicated what we say and how we decide and what we decide, but that the right cushions are placed for them not to bear the ultimate brunt. In the next years, looking forward, people will continue to look to Europe for leadership and direction. I think we have shown that in the past months, but we also showed it during the pandemic, when we approved unprecedented amounts of financial help for member states in order to take on or take over that so-called digital and green transition. Who would have told us that green transition will now almost entirely be rooted together with our climate ambitions in security? To finally understand that when we talk about energy, what our colleagues from countries, including yours with a border with Russia, have been telling us for years, that this is not something that we can take for granted. And that energy, especially when dependent on a volatile, intimidating, blackmailing partner, is always going to be about politics. We are also going to see continuous tests to the limits of our democratic values and European principles. And this means we are already seeing it, but we must fight back against a so easy anti-EU narrative that takes hold so quickly. So easily is disinformation and misinformation, nationalism, authoritarianism, ultimately protectionism that is a false illusion offering very little solutions, if any. I think Europe is about precisely the opposite. And it is about all of us standing up for one another and bringing our people closer together. I can tell you that this Parliament, and I'm really sharing a stage with great colleagues, has always stood up for Europe, for politics of hope, and the promise of the European Union. I grew up doing this. Sometimes I feel that it's just all of us. Actually, sometimes it is all of us that were around 20 years ago and are just now 20 years older. The Conference of the Future of Europe that concluded its work a week ago proved that what we tried to decide 20 years ago is back on the table, but it also proved that there continues to exist a gap between what people expect and what Europe is able to deliver at the moment. So the Parliament has already adopted with a big majority the triggering of a convention. This is something that the European Parliament will insist on. There are issues that simply cannot wait. I will give you a list. We are not talking about reinventing the wheel. We are talking about understanding that we need better infrastructure for defense. We are talking about looking at our security policy because we now know that we need each other and that alone we are vulnerable. It is also true for energy and climate change. And as I just said, we must support each other as we disentangle ourselves from the Kremlin and invest in alternative and renewable energy sources. As we have heard and have been promised as a European Parliament, our right to inquiry and initiative will be one of our main demands, but also in the area of health, one of the top demands of citizens. Imagine this conference took place, in the height of the pandemic, different waves, but still people turned up in person, online, extremely actively. I was present in the meetings and I was impressed. And that also showed me that, it was people from all walks of life, from different languages, traditions. I mean, what brings us together really? And how much can really make us work together for common solutions on health. Imagine at the beginning of the pandemic, what was the instinct of governments? Close the borders, as though the virus was going to stop on the Turku, Stockholm-Turku boat. Is it Stockholm-Turku? Yes, it is Stockholm. That's the first thing we did on the 25th of June when the borders opened. My husband, Oko, and I, we just started driving towards Stockholm and took a boat to Turku. As though it was going to stop. As though the instinct and whatever we needed to do is, let's not trust our neighboring country. Until we realized that, actually we need nurses, we need medical equipment, and later on we needed vaccines to reach everywhere. And still, we had to face a massive disinformation campaign, spread of propaganda, which is sometimes you will see today when you see what kind of messages that are pushing back against our narrative inside and outside the European Parliament in support of Ukraine, that there is some overlap there, but that's maybe for Tommy and the Martin Center to look at. When we talk about our economic model, I'm soon coming to an end. When we talk about our economic model, I think we must ensure flexibility without tying the hands for generations to come. Now, this is difficult to explain. We were already, Lidia, you can follow up as our econ expert, but we are being asked, and the risk is, of course, that we re-find our sort of instinct, depending on the member states you come from, to say, okay, no more money, or how much money is not spent yet, or why don't we redirect? Why don't we actually pause our overseas development assistance in order to try to address challenges within our borders? So these are going to be the big debates in the months to come. It is also true for migration, with looming food security challenges that are already being felt. Like some countries in Africa have 8 months worth of reserves, some have 10 weeks. Some can grow their own production, but they have no fertilizer. They depend on Ukraine, and have always depended on Ukraine. And finally, because today it's Ida Hobbit Day, it is true for equality and solidarity. I think it is important that we are organizing, that you are organizing this event today. I think it is important also for our political family to really ensure that wherever we go, in all our Europe, we have a place where you can be whoever you wish to be, and where your potential is not impacted by your birthplace, your gender, or sexual orientation. We are still very far away, even though on paper we might be closer, but in reality we are not. So I think that it is time for Europe to step up. I think that what was done by the generations that were involved in politics before us and encouraged us to enter politics because we believed our place was in Europe. I entered politics because I wanted a Europe that sees no old and new Europe. That for my country, there was no difference whether you come from for my country, whether you come from a big state or a small state, but also that this was the same message that I think it was nice to share and great to share with friends who are still really good friends from 9 countries who joined at the same time. And this is frankly what people from Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova, tomorrow we have the president of Moldova, Maia Sandu, in the plenary, who will definitely be asking for the same kind of vision and dreams and hope that we were offered when we were looking to join a union that was sometimes hesitant to open, to look outside its immediate borders. Few last paragraphs. I keep looking at Antti. So finally, because I don't want to move, in every paragraph, there's something that I need to mention. So now I want to talk about the EPP. As the leading political force in Europe, the EPP should be in the lead of this process. And in the last 20 years, the EPP and its center-right parties, Christian Democrat, Conservative and Liberal, were in governments all over Europe. They helped our countries overcome various crises and challenges, while at the same time managing to develop the EU further through, as I just mentioned, successive enlargements, treaty revisions, and decisive actions in several policy areas. I think this is an equal challenge for all traditional Christian Democrat, Social Democrat, and Liberal parties, If you look at political formations on the national or European level today, you have new populist movements on the right and on the left that offer simple answers to complex questions. But also we, and I think we can say that the established, we can use this word, pro-European parties in the center have to understand better and adapt our ways of communicating and explaining our ideas and our solutions. Because if people are afraid, justified or unjustified, of, let's call it, globalization and its consequences, of climate change and how that will influence their work and their life, of migration and how it will affect integration and cohesion of their communities, then we have to listen. And to, more importantly than listen, prove that we take these concerns seriously. We did not do this enough over the last years. And I am convinced that our center-right values are fit also for the future. But we need to develop our thinking and actions further. We need to adapt and to improve our interaction with the citizens. And I think our member parties have started to embrace this change. And today, I really look forward to having an open and frank discussion when I finally stop talking. President Donald Tusk and Tono, our Secretary General, with their teams, have done excellent work to keep the EPP constantly, in a difficult period, on top of the European agenda throughout the pandemic and in responding to the war reaching Europe. I have been knocking on Tono's doors for over 2 decades now, sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully. Wilfried Martin Center and President Mikuláš Dzurinda, with Tommy as its executive director, another one I have been knocking on doors for. You have made sure that our political family not only deals with the current affairs, but you think ahead and you really engage with society surrounding us. We need strong member parties from the north, from the south, from the west, from the central and eastern Europe, from the big and bigger member states alike. And in the leadership, we need people who have a vision, who have energy, and who have experience. And this is what I look forward to seeing, to having discussed together with Manfred and all the colleagues in Rotterdam, because this is what we need at the moment. This is what we need at the EPP. This is what Europe needs from the EPP. And in 2 weeks' time, I'm convinced that the EPP will put in place a team that is, first of all, hungry to win, that is, second of all, humble to serve, but most importantly, that has a vision for the future of all Europeans. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta, for your inspiring words. And as you mentioned about leadership, I think I can speak on behalf of everyone that you have shown in your job excellent, remarkable leadership. Now, as I understood, you have only a limited time, or okay. Okay. So if we go round of comments, or would you like to turn out? Would you like? Yes. Okay. Please, please. We continue with our keynote speakers, and yes, applause to Tono.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much. This is Europe about. I was just realizing there is a Portuguese, a Maltese, a Spanish, with all the Finnish friends. My dear Roberta, oof, you're very right. we lost a little bit of hunger, ambition, and we have to be a little bit more humble. You're absolutely pointed out. I think that these are the essential ingredients for the future of the YEPP. I have written because I want to take this for Rotterdam, and I will remember everybody in the plenary session about this. Because if we are not there, if the YEPP is not there, what is the alternative? Difficult. Huh? Henna, officially chairman, Pakarinen, friends, Tommy, Auntie. I saluted Roberta. I have to say also hello to Urko. He's there, is he? Ah, there he is. You were saying about humbleness, you were saying a little boat to go to Sweden. Urko, he has very big ships in his company. And what an incredible professional, Urko, that you are. And thank you also for supporting, because I know that these are hectic days for Roberta, and all the support from all the family. I know, I mean, what is going through this. It's sometimes difficult, but Roberta finding this support also is for all of us. It's a relief. Thank you for that. And also, I have so many things to tell you. I have, like Roberta, a 1 hour speech or a 10 minutes. I have to select. She had 16 and 15. No, I will be brief because I have to tell you, we are surrounded. You Finnish, you know very well about this. You have suffered in your history. You have had your good and bad moments with Russia. Russians are not all bad. You know that. There is a democratic opposition in Russia. There are a lot of Russians that they want to be free and democratic. But maybe we failed them when they had democracy, for a brief period, and we were not supportive enough. That's a reflection that we will have to make. And that's what Putin came. In your history, I love Russian history, by the way. And in the history, I remember the mother of Nikolai II was Finnish. There is a relation, sometimes bad, sometimes good. We have to work on the second one. And what better than the Finnish people to help us in this? Your accession to NATO. It was already in 2006 that Kokoomus was asking for that. Not with the wind in favor of the public opinion, like always with you, against the wave, against what it is fashion. You did the same when you defended the European Union against the very same parties that now they are all very pro-European, but they were not at that time. And you have succeeded. You won elections when the mainstream line was to criticize the European Union, and you defended the European Union. I remember very well with Jyrki, with Alex, and of course, to the maestro, Sauli Niinisto. Honorary president of the YEPP, by the way, for you to know. And now with Petteri, I cannot tell you that I have been following personally with tension, Mediterranean tension, your evolution now with the polls, and now that everything is looking good. We cannot sleep over that. Elections next year. It's crucial what will happen. I'm in contact with Petteri. Usually I call him, because I want to know what's going on. Now it's like a personal thing in Finland for me. And I see that the public opinion is supporting, and I see that the Finnish, they have good memories of who has been for a long time saying about NATO, remembering, Now is the time. Because, as I told you, we are surrounded by people that they don't like our way of life. They don't like our democratic system. They don't want the virus of democracy to go to them. You call it whatever you want to call it, Russian, Chinese, whatever. We have to defend this. It's a very unjust fight. You have sometimes the feeling that you have your hand tied to your back because you are a Democrat. You need the opinion of 27 countries. And it's as important the opinion of Germany as the one of Malta or Finland or Spain. This is this European Union about. That's why they don't like us. We don't want a Xi Jinping or Putin, whoever, deciding our future. Sometimes they tell me, with China we have to have good relations. I don't have any problem. Good trade with China. Please put me first. But my daughters, their future will not be dictated by the Communist Party of China. That I have very clear. And I belong to a generation that I think that we have been a little bit selfish. We inherited this European project from our fathers, grandfathers, that they had to live wars, hunger, desperation, and they left us this. And us, that we lived, especially my generation, the happy 80s, the happy 90s, Berlin Wall fell, and we were all lose our hunger, our ambition. We thought that everything was arranged. Wake-up call. And it was not now in Ukraine. This wake-up call came, the war in the Balkans in the 90s, with the take of Georgia, part of Georgia, with the take of Crimea, and now the Europeans were a little bit slower to react. Some maybe critics about how do we react, they are true. Also because we have to take the decision between all of us, and this takes time. This is how Democrats we are. But now finally we have waken up to reality. And we have to fight back with all our means. And NATO will now have the privilege to have one of the finest, most equipped armies in Europe, which is the Finnish and the Swedish. I think it's a privilege, and this should be done in a very quick way. You are starting to suffer now the consequences. They're already cutting the gas, you know how they play. Huh? But you will resist. You have done it your whole life. You have resisted all kind of invasions. You have fighted always back. One of my reliefs is that the Spanish, we went many places in the world, relief that we didn't have to fight against you. You would have beaten us with your resistance and your, I know. And especially because you are people that it's hard from you to get your trust. It's very hard. But once you have it, you never lose it. And there is people that they don't understand this. I did. In my many visits, in my many personal moments in Finland, I can tell you, I finally had this sensation, and I am so proud. Especially when it was 2019, that I was so honored that I was the guest at the celebrations of the anniversary of Kokoomus. That was very personal. I think that Finland needs a serious, strategical government. Like in many other European countries, enough of the magical solutions. No. Hard work, reality. And of that, members of Kokoomus, I know that you know very well, and that's why you are supporting in sometimes good times, but also bad times. You maintained your line. And I think that people finally will bet for that. I start to sense, maybe someone will say I'm too optimistic, but I start to sense that people in Europe want to return to this kind of line. They had enough. They are having enough of this populism. That's why these populists, they're very smart, huh? Now they are saying they are getting a little bit more light, moderate. You saw in France with Le Pen. Suddenly now, well, she's not Miss Europe, but it's changed her approach. They're very smart because they know that they are losing now some of the public approach. And these people, they profit from crisis. You name it, economical crisis, Ukraine, whatever, COVID. It's always there, a hidden opportunity to do their bullshit. Because what are the solutions to the real problems of the Europeans? When they arrive to government, you see that they don't have any. Extreme right or extreme left, you name it. Roberta mentioned it. Center is the place where we have to be. Reasonable managers, that's what unites Kokoomus, Partido Popular, Partido Nacionalista, PSD, is that we are good managers, we make people's lives easy, we don't bring fantasies, false fantasies to them, and we don't move from our line because we know that we are in the right line. 2024 will be the European elections, too soon. First we have the national elections, we have to concentrate on that in Finland. But I think that what Roberta said about the YEPP is absolutely true. We are in the direction of things here in Brussels since 1999. We have to give now the extra battle. And this battle is not at European level for these elections, it's at national level because European elections continue now today to be national elections. What Kokoomus does in Finland, what Partido Popular does in Spain, what the others do in their countries will be essential for this. I know the programs of other parties, I see them in action in the parliament, I don't see that they have, what it takes to maintain this European project. And we have, in many speeches you have heard about the many problems we are facing, many challenges that we are facing. I think that we also have to give them solutions, and that's what we are here for. And that's what unites us. People from so different lands, cultures. Many times I meet with Latin Americans in the parliament and in meetings also there, and I said, come on, I'm sitting here together with Swedes, with Italians, with Germans, and we are deciding things. Can you do the same thing? You speak the same language, you have the same culture, you have the same, That's selfishness. Look what we have here, what they gave to us, this project. Let's, my friends, defend it between all of us. They are calling for now to be present. Now we have to defend this. It's no time now to, to see Brussels and the European project as something far away. It's the only thing protecting us from what's coming. We have a reedition of the Cold War, ladies and gentlemen. It was the United States and Russia time ago. Now it's United States and China. And again, we're seeing the same regional conflicts like in the past, Vietnam, Korea, Hungary, Cuba. Now it's Ukraine. Tomorrow will be maybe Taiwan, Transnistria. Us, Europeans, we have to wake up and see what is the world that we are leaving to our sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters. This is what we have to think about, the future that we are living. And we have to start to work now. I think that in the case of Kokoomus, I don't have any Others I have to tell, and we will say that in the Congress in Rotterdam. But in Kokoomus, I don't have any trouble to recognize that we can count with all of you, not only in Finland, but here. Again, thank you very much, and I'm now willing for the exchange and to see also what is your views, your opinions about the actual situation. I think it's going to be very important for the days to come, and especially, as it was mentioned, for our Congress in Rotterdam. I know that I will see many of you in our Congress, and I hope that you enjoy it. It's a very important feature, and you can count, as always, with me, whatever you want. I think that my office, I know, Roberta said it, sometimes, you know, it's open, others not. So I was listening to that, I said, okay, but my office is open, and whenever you want, please tell me so, and I will be available. The Finnish, you have a special place in my heart for all this time and to continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. General Secretary. Thank you, Tono. Kind words, and this is probably proper time to thank you not only what you have done for the YEPP family, but what you will do for the YEPP family. So thank you. And now at this moment I would like to welcome Lidia, the president of YEPP, MEP Lidia Pereira, to our panel, and you have the floor now. Yes, please. Yes, thanks.
Good afternoon to everyone. First, and let me start by thanking Pete for the kind invitation to be here today, and the opportunity to see so many familiar faces, and in particular to share the panel with fellow colleagues from the Parliament, Henna, Roberta, the President, Madam President, and Tono. And Tono, actually, I'll be knocking at your door again soon, because we have to talk about the subvention for YEPP. Due to the inflation, it's quite difficult to manage. No, I'm kidding, but we will have to talk. And there's a Congress in the loop, so we have many things still to discuss. But anyway, no, I'm just being a bit provocative. Now, I wanted to start by maybe saying, in the conversation that Pete and I had in the preparation for this evening, Pete was asking me, be provocative, so I'm following your instructions. Now, I think it's important from what we heard from Roberta, and I apologize for being here a bit later, when I was kept in the Parliament. But I think it's something to notice or to note. This year, YEPP is celebrating 25 years, and I was doing some research to prepare some initiatives and activities in the beginning of this year. And I found a quote from Wilfred Martens about how YEPP has united the East and the West before the European Union. And that was also what EPP has done until today. Connecting, strengthening, and delivering. And I think we should make maybe a reflection about where we were. And Tono, we were talking about this yesterday or last week about where EPP was just a few years ago in terms of, the presence in national governments and where we are today, and the challenges that we had in the past, the challenges we have now in the present and for the future. And I have been saying this, and I'm strongly convinced about this, that when we discussed about the future of Europe, well, I'm very clear. I don't think there's any future of Europe without a strong center-right. So I think these initiatives where we bring ourselves together, where we share our experiences, are important, where we see the differences from the south and the north, the east and the west, but we see the richness of our union. And I think it's also relevant to start by the end of history. When in 1992, I was 1 year old. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Francis Fukuyama declared the end of history in his very famous book. And it was the alternative way of liberalism seemed to fail. And we believed then that it would be possible, the rise of liberal democracy from Lisbon to Moscow, and the common economic growth and development would help to foster a new partnership when times before we had difficulties and adversaries or even enemies. And today we are witnessing, we are observing these two confrontational topics, partnership or confront. In the last 3 decades, based in the good faith, and now I think we were naive. The Western Europe was naive. We increased the economic cooperation with Russia, and especially we became much more vulnerable because of our energetic dependence from Russia, believing that the European model of peace and common well-being that was proposed by Robert Schuman, sharing goods and resources and so on, would contribute for a better relationship with Russian leaders. But unfortunately, we were wrong. We were wrong. And Finland was probably, you were all much more aware of this reality, considering the historical relationship with Russia. But I think the European soft power and the acceptance of Russian provocations contributed for the escalation of this hard power approach from Putin's regime, who faces the 21st century based on a 19th century perspective of the world. And these reminders, what I'm bringing here for this reflection, these reminders are quite simple, and Tono and you already mentioned a few of them, but I don't think we faced them seriously. We didn't face it when Georgia was invaded. We didn't face it when Crimea was invaded. We didn't face it when political opposition leaders were poisoned to death. We didn't want to face it when thousands of Russians were protesting and then were put to jail, or when free speech and press became suppressed. And those simple facts we should keep in mind when we are speaking about the future of democracy and why we should fight for freedom. Russian violence, in fact, was never theoretical. It was real, and we just didn't want to face it. And when there was the very start of the war on the 24th of February in Ukraine, I went back to see the speech from Vladimir Putin in 2007 in the Munich Security Conference. It was all there. He said everything. We just didn't want to face it. And so this brings me to the point on how democracies die, right? This title of a history book that you probably very much well known, it shows that sometimes democracy dies with a bang, be it with a coup d'etat, or that brings down the government, a march on capitals, martial law that is declared, and state media is taken over. But more often, democracies, it seems like they are dying slowly. And in plain sight, right? At the hands of elected officials through the gradual erosion of political norms and institutions. And the four main indicators to look out for are rejection of or weak commitment to the democratic rules of the game, denial of the legitimacy of political opponents, toleration or encouragement of violence, readiness to curtail the civil liberties of opponents, including the media. So democracies die when institutions start to fail, organizations, when separation of powers capitulate, and when justice is not independent and minorities are not respected, and when free speech and human rights are not respected. But democracies also die when fail answering the people's expectations, and when dreaming and living are not connected. So this point leads me to democracy in Europe and the EPP. I don't believe that this is happening in most European countries, but maybe in some, or in one or two, in fact, we see that the rule of law is under attack. But it is not enough if we are just sensing a feeling of disbelief in democracy. We need to have a strong center-right, ambitious political approach. We cannot keep an old, fatigued narrative that kind of puts in question our values, democracy, freedom or defense of human rights, or being less ambitious in protecting the future from climate change, from environment. I mean, this is our topic. We are a federation of conservatives, of liberals, of many political, different political wings, but this is our topic. We cannot live with peace or economic growth or health, so we cannot leave it an empty space for socialists and for liberals. So this is our agenda, and we must deliver a new horizon for the future of Europe. It is EPP responsibility because it has always been. It's part of our DNA. Since the first steps of European construction to the most relevant moments of our European Union. We are the pro-European party. We even used to be federalists at the very beginning. So, but what we are witnessing as well is that we have problems and challenges that are changing very, very quickly. Like the way we live, the way technology speeds up. If we look at the Industrial Revolution, it took several years to happen. But then we look at Twitter, and Twitter was online in 29 days. And then we had a pandemic that came without any notice, right? We were all surprised, and we were all, even for us that started the mandate in 2019 in July, and then suddenly in February to 2020, we were locked at home, trying to understand how we were going to work as parliamentarians. And now we have war and the economic and social impact of these two elements. We have climate change disasters that are happening as well without notice, and they are worsening and getting worse and worse. So we need to have a strong narrative and a strong capacity to show why our view, the EPP view, is the best way to make defense and security, economic growth, and the protection for our environment possible. Politicians need to be able to understand the world and the present solutions. And if the world changes faster, we have to keep up with that pace. Well, we've been talking a lot about resilience and about resilience of the EU and its institutions in times of war. And the answer that has been given, and it was led by inspiring people like our President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, our President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, EPP Group President, Manfred Weber, and so many other political leaders, Tono, as Secretary General of EPP, are the best to answer to that question, the question of resilience and institutions in times of war. But it has been clear, maybe like as never before, that we were stronger together, and the future of Europe can only last with the integration and strengthening of our capacities. We still have some challenges to tackle, like our common defense, dependence from the US and NATO, the unanimous decision making in the decision-making process that delays some of our steps in front of us. But even with some of these issues, we should be proud about our common contribution for the European project. And then, continuing on the provocation that you asked me, Pete, to answer, what are the steps to take for 2024 elections, even though we know that Finland has an additional challenge before, and what is the role of the European parties? I mean, people need to know more about our efforts. We are working for and with the people. The Conference on the Future of Europe, I think it was a great example on how we can be closer to the people, and frankly is more about communication and less about creating transnational lists of European people's representatives. So in 2024 elections, the future of Europe will be again tested, and we must stand up to defend our political capital, not only according to our past, but more about how we can overcome people's expectations in the future. So we need, I want to conclude by saying that we need to reconnect with people after these 2 years of being apart because of the pandemic, because of the situation in Ukraine. But we have to deliver according to their expectations, because we know that democracies die, and we know that they are dying slowly, or they are putting in question. And last but not least, the enlargement, and Roberta mentioned it, we were a bit afraid of welcoming other countries, but now we are seeing what is happening at the gates of Europe. And even myself, I used to be a bit reluctant about what should be the orientation, the guidance of the EU towards those regions, Eastern regions, Balkans, and so on. But what we are witnessing is a waking up call to actually be ready to deliver for the people that see in the European Union a chances to succeed and to have a better future. So thank you so much for welcoming me here and for inviting me, and I'll be glad to take any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Lidia. Very, I wouldn't say provocative, but very thoughts-inspiring words you gave. And as good host, we save Finns for last. So Henna, if you like to take a floor, you are. Or, okay, you. Okay, then. Okay, we can go directly. Then we can go to discussion directly, and I'm sure. I'm sure that the audience has lots of questions, and I do have a few questions as well, but I spare a good part of them, and I just put out one of the questions, which is directly about the European elections, because what we were talking about, or you were talking about the election, mentioning Finnish elections, and the European elections tend to be, let me say, national elections in 27 European countries simultaneously. And several times there's been lots of attempts to create a common European debate on common European issues. But for reasons or another, it has more or less failed. So how do you think, what is your recipe? Do we need a common European debate for European elections, and if, how we can create it? Would you, Roberta, like to start?
So next election in 2024 will be the 5th time I run for the European Parliament. Well, I was really young when I started and unsuccessful twice. So but I ran in 2004 for the first time, so just a few weeks after Malta joined the European Union. And there it was truly with a European project and manifesto, you know, that we are joining. I remember our slogan was, we are joining the European Parliament's largest group. And this is where Europe, this was after almost a decade-long battle to campaign to enter the European Union. It was not easy. It was, I remember there was a lot of nervousness in Brussels since we were the first country to hold the referendum. And it was so close and so disputed that everybody said, oh, Malta will be easy. Of course, nothing is ever easy in my country, and every election is always close and disputed. But it was a message that, look, Malta wanted to join, and that was a campaign we ran. 5 years later, in 2009, that was gone. That was gone. And I remember as a candidate, it was almost like, yeah, you know, the more I talk about Europe, the less it's going to resonate with the audience. 2014, I was elected. And then it was about your experience. So what have you done? I had been there for 10 months. What have you done that has made my life better? And I realized, it took me 10 years to realize that unless we are going to transmit what we have done into language that can be understood, tailor-made to who is in front of you, not use the same stock, high rhetoric that we have all made the mistake of using, then you can bring the subject to the core of every kitchen that you visit. And the way you do it is that you don't make a distinction between Europe and home, because home is Europe. We have a very direct election system, so every vote you get, you have to get, because you would have knocked on the door and tried to convince sometimes a very, very skeptical audience that it is worth voting for the European Parliament. In 2019, 26 out of 28 member states, top concern migration, even Finland, in all the polls. 27, the other 2 member states were UK and Ireland. That was Brexit being the #1 concern. The rest, migration. What is our chance now? The big risk is that we spend a lot of time talking about treaty change and how that's going to fix everything. Because I refer to the experience 15, 20 years ago, we thought we made a big leap by putting qualified majority in this area. And we have the word solidarity in the area of migration. You know, how can you tell certain countries that have for a very long time faced an influx and everybody else looked away? And that's not because there's unanimity in the treaty, or that we are going to spend a whole year going, yes, we need to change this article or not. We have to say that where there is political will, we can actually make a difference. And we have seen Europe in the past 2 years with the pandemic, and now since the war, more than we have ever seen Europe before. And we have now that momentum that we need to capitalize on, take the opportunity, explain why certain decisions have been taken, why it was better to take them at a European level, because it was easy to translate that to the national level, And I think if we take that with us over the next 2 years, with the big, as Lidia so cleverly put it, that climate is our subject. Our subject. It is not anybody else's. That it is not exclusive or mutually exclusive to investments, to economy, to research. Our core fundamental electoral manifesto pillars. And I think we can, with a good program, with the leadership that we can continue to have at the helm of the European People's Party, that would bring together those core points that can be told with different languages, different messaging in all countries. I am convinced. I am convinced. The one thing I did when I got elected president is I said, I don't want to only do state visits where I just meet the president and the prime minister and, you know, and trumpets, etc. The Italians have a lot of trumpets. But that I want to go to schools and I want to go to meet people who are going to vote in 2024. And I want to ask them, and it has been fantastic as an experience every time I've gone. And as I said, you know, sometimes the questions were harder, sometimes they were written by their teachers, okay. Sometimes they focused on questions that I did not predict, but they wanted to know. And they want to know from me, they want to know from Tonno, Henna, Lidia, whoever is presenting themselves for a parliament that they might have visited, they might not, but that is open and that is willing to listen, and that can change their lives. And I am convinced that the next 2 years can lead to a very successful, energetic and visionary message that says, in Italian we say, l'Europa c'è, that Europe is there. And I think we can manage, and I think this party can do that.
Shall we continue to round with ladies? Henna.
Yeah, thank you. I think Roberta is really on the campaign mode already. So yeah, because you I think were really inspiring us already to do campaigning. But I think it's important, of course, that we have European topics as a political parties, of course, in different member states. Also in Finland, Kokoomus will have, I think, very European topics we want to discuss, but I think it's always very much up to member states that what is the interesting topic from the point of view of the citizens. So it's very difficult to plan anything like that this will be like the main topic. So, because we never know. And I think anyway, all the campaigns, they have to be done in the local level, in the member states. And I have also the experience that the people, they are surprisingly, I think, interested in European topics and issues. Because when I was elected to European Parliament 8 years ago, I used always to visit in different cities in Finland and meet people in cafeterias and so on, host different events. And I thought that maybe like nobody is coming because it has a little bit that kind of image that European things are not, maybe European Union things are not so interesting. But there was always, I think, a house full of people who wanted to discuss about different things, about international politics. During that time, very much about the USA, often about Poland and Hungary, now about Russia. And they really feel that the European Union is the place where we are making important decisions which will have impact to their everyday life. So I'm not like very negative on that the people are not interested in European topics. I think they are really, but it's very difficult to plan that what will be the most important topic during the European election. It's possible that it's something very, you know, it has been migration, it has been the economic crisis, and we don't know what it is after 2 years. But now we can see it from Finland that the support for the European Union is very, very strong now in Finland, because the main reasons why Finland was joining European Union 27 years ago, it was about the security. We wanted to make sure that we have security and stability in the future, and also about economics. And I think these are still the two main topics which are interesting from the Finnish perspective: security and stability, and then also the economical part.
Thank you. Lidia, please. Yes, Lidia.
Roberta, thank you so much for inspiring us to be already in a campaign mood, because I totally share your views. I mean, our campaign is not in the 15 days before the election. Our campaign is during the 5 years of our mandate. So we have to keep up with that commitment. I strongly believe in what I'm saying, and actually, being president of YEPP sometimes forces me, or allows me, I think it's the best word, to go on weekends in representation to other countries to visit our members. But when I'm at home, when I'm in Portugal, I always go and visit different organizations, schools, universities, businesses. And what I feel, and this is something that I've been thinking about, was back in 2019, there was this listening tour that was put forward by our Spitzenkandidat, Manfred Weber at the time. And what I feel today, and after these 2 difficult years, is that people really want to be heard. They want to voice their frustrations, and they want us to listen and to take action. So this is a good element as well to, somehow guide our political career or our political circumstance as political representatives. But it is important to keep in mind that we cannot expect people to go to vote for European elections when the debate at home is national, and there's an absence of European affairs from the media during the 5 years when we are at the helm of our functions as political representatives. So we have to mind this gap. Like, people have to. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone in Portugal was looking at Brussels and, please resolve this, we don't understand this virus, how are we gonna manage? Like, help, right? And then, like, somehow when the time comes and when we have to speak about what we are, why are we running for MEPs, or what we want to achieve and to deliver for people, and people feel like there's this gap also in terms of communication and media. I think it is a big issue. And what I think we also need to grasp a bit more, and maybe taking the example of Finland, is the European feeling. Like, we sense this now. There's the European feeling, and we have to harness the potential of that and actually explain to people why the European Union is so important, and not as only the cash cow that comes when, which happens often. Unfortunately, it's not the view I share from my country, but because Europe is much more than that. European Union is much more than that, and people have to understand it during the time that we are here. What do we do? Accountability, checks and balances, what they can expect from us, what we can do, because there's a lack of understanding on what are the competencies of the Union and what are the competencies and the political responsibility of the national governments. I see this every day on the news, like mixing up things. No, employment, social affairs, that's more a competence, a national competence, rather than, which doesn't mean that it can be somehow partially shared within the scope of our treaties. But people have to understand that, because we are living in a much more interdependent and transnational framework than ever before. And people have difficulties in, identifying who's responsible for what. But during, as being politicians, we also have this duty to communicate and to go towards, meeting the expectations of the people, and so people can make informed decisions when 2024 comes.
Thanks, Lidia. And last, the man whose job is to run European campaigns. Sometimes an easy job.
Don't remind me. We have done well, but okay, it's a little nightmare. Later you remember with, like all campaigns, we all remember with happy memories. We forget about the bad moments. I was inspired by Roberta. I was remembering my evolution. You know, I started, my first campaign was also in 2004, a European campaign. It was also on an island in Mallorca. And I think I spent the whole campaign trying to convince the voters that I was not German. They didn't know me. And when they saw me, you know, coming to the podium, they thought I was German. What? Well, nowadays it's different, you know. I would say that the perception has changed in the Spanish people. At that time, there was no debate, European debate. Money was flowing, everybody, you know, which has helped a lot my country for an incredible development. People were happy, and you know, and now there is debate, growing debate. My aspiration, like all of you, is that, you know, in the European elections, I could discuss about European things for, until now it has been 10% of our time. I wish next time will be 20 or 30%, because the 80% is about national affairs, and I cannot change that. Journalists need their headlines, the others I don't need, you know, so we are confronted with this dilemma. I want to speak about what's going on in Europe that affects them, but we are tied to this. Now more than ever, because now, you know, with the headlines in the media, you know, every 5 minutes headlines, you cannot speak about content also. That's a problem. Strategical thinking, no. About the transnational list and all these, you know, things that are being discussed, I think that we need a little bit of a generational change. Today, the chairman of YEPP, the chairwoman of YEPP, the chairwoman of the parliament, they can make campaigns in different countries. They are used to. Lidia can go to Slovenia and make a political rally, or to Greece. Roberta also, anywhere in Europe. I can do maybe a political rally in Helsinki as well as in Athens, but we are few still. We need more generations of people that they will be used to that. Because today, asking someone from Toledo, Spain to vote for a Swedish candidate, difficult. Or someone from Uppsala to vote for a Spanish candidate, very difficult, okay? We want this. Lidia mentioned that. We are federalists. We dream about that. I don't know if I will see that, but I'm very patient. It will come. Bono, from U2, made a speech, wonderful speech in our Congress in Dublin. And he said something like, Europe is an idea, but will become real when it becomes a feeling. Lidia, you said it. It has to become a feeling. And still, it's not the case. We are starting. We feel more than 50 years ago. But still has to evolve. Young generations that they are traveling around and discovering that maybe Spain is not about also all flamenco, that Italy is not all about pizza, you know, that Finland is not about, you know, Santa Claus, you know. Beating these also ideas, these, you know, prejudices, you know, in many cases. Now these generations that they have Erasmus, that they fly around, I have always said the best thing for this European Union has been Erasmus and low-cost airlines. Because people are traveling around and discovering. I had these Mallorquinians from the island. I saw them in the airport of Barcelona, and they told, where are you going? Oh, member of parliament, how are you? Tono. I said, very well. Where are you going? We're going to Slovenia. Very well. Yeah, they are not Soviet. They don't have Kalashnikovs, you know. They don't know. They come from a small town in Mallorca. They don't know. They don't know that Slovenia is already a member of the European, you know, countries. Not against Slovenia, is that they don't know. They have to travel and see these things, okay? Let's be patient. If we try to jump these steps, we will make a mistake. That's what happened with the European Constitution. Maybe it was too soon for people to digest. Okay? When we try to jump these steps, that's why we have to be careful, because people have to adapt. Frontiers out. Everybody together in defense. You know, I mean, these are things that people have to digest. So we have to be patient. Us that we are enthusiasts, we have to be patient. I wish, and this is my dream, that the next European elections, you know, and also how people take in some countries the European elections still not as serious as in national elections. That's why we have some of the, I always say sorry for that, some crazy people in the European Parliament. I say it, no one says. We have, you know, some representatives that you cannot find, you know. I mean, it's incredible, because they are voted because people still they don't take seriously this. This is a big effort. I don't think that now this will happen. You have to deal with them. Yes. I think that, you know, I think that now reality bites. I think that now reality bites. The Ukrainian reality has shown that I think that people will take in 2024 more seriously, you know, this. I'm sure about it. So I have my hopes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, traveling is definitely good for me. The European experience was Interrail at the time. Yeah. Now we give the voice to audience, and please first introduce yourself, and you can, if you want to address your question or comment to a specific member of the panel, tell that please, or if it's general. But yeah, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Heidi Hanhela. I come from youth of the Kokoomus and YEPP as well, of course. I have a question regarding humanitarian aid to Ukraine. I've actually been in constant contact with my friends from Ukraine, from Solidarna Molod, which is the youth organization of European Solidarity, our sister party. And actually they were just on Saturday in Brussels, because they are right now traveling with buses through Europe, because they are collecting medicine and needed items in Ukraine, because at this moment they are really lacking humanitarian aid. There simply isn't any more humanitarian aid coming to Ukraine at this point of the war. There have been a lot of discussions about, for example, oil embargo, sanctions, which are of course crucial, but so is humanitarian aid, because right now the Ukrainians, some of them are really dying because they don't have the simple everyday medicine. So my question is, what's happening in the EU, and what are the next steps for the EU regarding humanitarian aid to Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you. Good and serious question. Who would like to answer? 10 minutes around. Let's take another question. If you, yes, here. I don't have a mic. Yeah, you'll get one.
Thank you very much. Now that we are heading towards the European election,
please, can you say
yes, I'm Sari Artjoki, head of unit in Commission and former head of representation of Finland, of EC in Finland. So I just wanted to share a very kind of a positive message to all of us now that we are going towards the European election, because I think firmly, and I guess that we all agree, that the past 2 years have been absolutely horrendous with the COVID, with the Ukraine crisis. But at the same time, I have seldom seen the European Union being so united and delivering so firmly like we have now. And there has, in my opinion, also been unprecedentedly kind of a concrete feel to it. Our values have really been debated in at least the national media of Finland, but also elsewhere. So I think that we have an excellent track record, not only in this party, but overall. What I would like to hear your analysis about, and this sort of relates to what Roberta was saying about middle ground, because I was really puzzled after the French election, because it really seemed that apart from Macron, there was really a lot of happening in the extremes, extreme left, extreme right. And is there something that we can learn about that when we are going towards the election? And what should we be able to, or what should we be prepared to expect from the populism, from disinformation, from influencing of the electoral process this time? Now that the populism is looking at very much different and perhaps a bit less strong than last time.
Thank you, Sari. Shall we take?
What was the role of Macron in the advancement of these two extremes in the French elections? I will speak about that.
Yeah. Shall we take third question? If anyone, or yeah, there.
So I'm Mark van Kranenburg and I'm a trainee at the EPP group. I suppose I'm not the only one who's very interested in international relations scholar and who's read realist scholars like Marsheimer. I'm gonna play the devil's advocate, but I want to ask you, does this whole situation prove, according to realist scholars, that realism is still a relevant theory after the Cold War? What happens on our eastern border? And what is your response to realist scholars that students have to read, that I had to read, not playing the devil's advocate, that further integration is actually only adding fuel to the fire? So how do you approach this from a theoretical point of view? Thank you.
Let's go for answers, and of course, the shorter you are, the more time we will have, probably for a final question, if any. But yeah, lots of things to answer. Who wants to begin?
On humanitarian aid, we have done, let's say, taken decisions, first of all, in the beginning of the war, in terms of directing funds to different member states that were welcoming Ukrainians into their homes. And what we have seen at the local level, what mayors have done. You mentioned buses. First few weeks, I met in Strasbourg members of the local government that were at that night welcoming buses from Ukraine directly. And I said, where are they going? They said, Porto. And I said, why? They're like, well, because we are a network of mayors, and the first thing you do is you call your friend. They say, can you please, I have 200, can you take them? And the answer is always invariably yes. So we start from that, because if there was not that political will to redivert funds, to adopt the care regulation, the Care Plus instrument, which, by the way, we adopted at lightning speed in the European Parliament, is also credit to the decision-making process where there is the resources and the will to do it. We are still very far away. So now one of our biggest challenges, as you mentioned, is a lot of Ukrainians are returning to the west of the country. And there we are being asked, I just met a number of MPs this afternoon from the Verkhovna Rada, that we need to help those specific towns. Medical supplies is particularly a problem. So the air route is gone, the sea route is gone, so everything has to be done by land and by rail. And it's extremely dangerous, and people driving in are very less in number than people driving out. So we rely a lot on the big international organizations such as the IRC, but also UNHCR. They are on the ground, the IOM is on the ground, but there is there needs for more coordination, and it will become increasingly difficult when the resources and what they have start to run out, like they did in Mariupol, without a possibility to send them in. So I think we can do much more. But again, the European Parliament promised to be efficient. And I see Lena Linnus in front of me, and I cannot not credit her and her colleagues in the Parliament that the minute this happened, we switched on a gear that we were never on. So I give you one example. We needed to widen the trade brackets, the tariffs in the, for Ukraine, The vote took place yesterday in the International Trade Committee. We vote on it tomorrow in the plenary. And that, I can tell you, would never have happened before. We have the same with the macro-financial assistance, with the second tranche that needs to come, etc. So I'm just giving you examples that we have done things that have never been seen with such speed. And it is with this point that I would like to answer the third question on integration, because I think the word integration is misunderstood. I think that we have spent too much time thinking of it as a negative word. I think that when we show that we have integrated our digital markets, or reinforced free movement, or allowed students to travel everywhere and learn different languages independent of which country they were born in, I think that's an integration we should be proud of. Now, do we use that as an argument to say, okay, let's wait the last enlargement round, we're still sort of with consequences, don't move. I mean, but at the same time, we tell our Western Balkan colleagues, listen, you know, you can do this, this and this, change your country's name, etc., and you will find us, only for them to say, actually, no. Where does that leave us? And perhaps one last word, when we were talking previous decades, on enlargement, it was mostly economical as an argument. Today, it's really more than that. And it is a security plus a political democracy exercise that we need to ask ourselves. Do we want to go there? And if we don't, what will happen to us? And then we can forget the word integration, because we would have disintegrated internally, if I can play a little bit on the words. On what happened in France, but also in other countries. I think the error that was made by the traditional party is try to move to their own extremes and try to first ignore an emerging easy populist narrative and then adopt it and think that the voters were going to come to them. Not only did they not, in some countries they stay home, but in other countries they go, no, I want a politician I can talk to. I want someone I can feel is on my level, and that's what happened, I think, in the country that you mentioned. And in a process that brought together people who would never have identified with that center, but would still today, if you ask, and they tell you, actually, I'm a Christian Democrat, or I'm a Liberal Democrat, or I'm a Green, or I meet all sorts of colleagues tell me this, but today I sit here. And that's, I think, a question we should ask ourselves. Why are we no longer the home of those individuals who felt that they had no other option? Is it because we adopted a narrative that was not ours and we failed? I think so. Is it because we were too comfortable in government that we did not realize that there was an ever-growing disenchantment between the cities and the rural areas, France in particular, but also that we thought that we knew better? And at the end of the day, we need to first understand that certain things happened, our societies moved forward, we didn't, and we now have to play catch up. And I think that we are showing that in a number of countries. I'm always optimistic in this regard. I can see movements in different coalitions and voters that will come back. Sunday's elections in North Rhine-Westphalia is one particular example. But also we will see more black-green coalitions in Germany, which is something also that should be natural for us to be and to work with, rather than automatically say, actually not, we'll disentangle ourselves from that possibility. So I think politically we need to change the way we approach campaigns. One, we field candidates, and what we say, and ultimately what we want to achieve. And that is not some misplaced nostalgia of when we were great, but rather how are we going to win again?
Thanks. Thank you, Roberta. Anyone else wants to comment? Yep, please, Henna, and then Tono.
I think, of course, there isn't anything good in the Ukrainian war, but in a way it has also showed to us that when we are united in the European Union, I think we can act and much better what we thought, especially what I thought. So I was quite surprised in February when the member states started to take actions, and normally it takes like weeks or months to negotiate about that kind of thing, and very historic decisions were made. And I think it was very encouraging for us, because it showed that if we are united, we are very, very powerful also. And of course now we have also good cooperation with United States, and I think it has been also very encouraging to us to see that our Western allies are working so well together, and also UK has been coordinating their actions with us. So I think there has been many very encouraging signals during this process. And at the same time, it's very worrying what Heidi said about humanitarian aid, that more is needed. And it's always, of course, risk in that kind of wars, that when the people in the way, when it's get longer, then it's not creating so much attention anymore. So that's why I think it's very important that we and you are putting the pressure that more humanitarian aid is needed. And now we have to also think in the European Union level that how we can finance this all, because we know that the European Union budget is not it's not prepared for that kind of situation we have, because now it's estimated that Ukraine needs every month about 5 billion euros just to run everyday needs they have, and they need a lot of support for a long time, and we have to start to think that how we can help them. And we know also from the Finnish perspective that Finns are the ones who are very willing to help Ukrainians in all possible terms. Just in last week there was Eurobarometer published, and it was very interesting to see the Finnish figures there, because the Finnish citizens, they were like leading all the figures there. Finnish people were the ones who saw that Ukrainians belongs to Europe. And Finnish people were the first ones who says that. And then it was very interesting to see, I don't know why it comes that Finnish people were second on the figure that how much solidarity and sympathy you feel to Ukrainians. Portugal was number one. So the Portuguese people were the number one to say that they feel so much sympathy and solidarity for Ukrainians, but Finnish people were the number two in this. And then Finnish people were most ones to support all the financial assistance, humanitarian aid, also exporting guns to Ukraine. Finnish people were supporting very strong sanctions against Russia. So it shows that I think the citizens of Finland, they really feel that what happens in Ukraine could happen also in Finland. It could be us. So I think this war has very much underlined also the important role of European Union for Finnish people, and I think we are committed more than ever to European Union because of this Russian attack. But it's important what you said about humanitarian aid and all the support to Ukrainians, that we have to keep up now the process with it, and find also new solutions how we can fund and help them and support them.
And Tono, please. Or okay.
About humanitarian aid, in my country, for example, in Spain, while the government was discussing sending yes or no, because we have a communist part it's the only one in Europe in our government, in the coalition, and these communists are, of course, very friendly with Putin. Openly, I mean, there's no secret about that. The civil society in Spain was impressive. There were hundreds of taxis, and going to Ukraine from, Spain with food and medicines. There was a big movement by the civil society, and I'm proud because in Spain the discussion about Ukraine since 2 months ago, it was non-existing. So, and we have had many examples of this around Europe. About the so-called integration, or let's say maybe enlargement, or if countries democratically want to adhere to NATO or to the European Union, I mean, we have to be friendly with this. As always, as the accomplice with the criteria, which is not easy criteria, as many of you that you are experts, see people from the Commission and the European Parliament, you know. I mean, it's not very easy to become member and to accomplish with all the criteria. You know, and if democratically, you know, they want to do it, now I hear, no, we should not have let the Ukrainians dream about joining NATO. Excuse me, if that country, the majority democratically wants to do it, why cannot? We cannot go against this. Macron is one of my favorite topics. So I was coming to that. Be careful with those who, you know, I don't know to what degree, voluntarily or involuntarily, are playing with the extremes in order to be the only ones finally in the elections. I don't know if that was the strategy. I don't know. I'm just saying. Traditional parties made mistakes, yes, but maybe it was in the interest of the candidate to arrive to that position where only it's me or chaos. I don't know. There is maybe political temptation. I cannot say, but food for thought. Lot of big, you know, fantastic pictures, lot of great speeches, but at the end, what? During 5 years in France, was there any fundamental reform that France needs? No. I always made the distinctions. You have radical populists, those extremes, you know, and then there are the Confucian ones, more moderate, that they are very good in the media. They speak nice words, but at the end of the term, you ask, "What have you done?" I only wish Macron has a fundamental role now. I hope that these next 5 years he takes it seriously. And it's not about bringing fantastic ideas. The political community, European community, something like that he has spoken recently. And what is the content of this? When you give fantastic ideas, you also have to give the content, because if then, you know, what is the, the sensation from the public? I hope. In the past, there were two major international events for France. One was Lebanon. That was always traditionally, France had an influence, even positive influence, in a very difficult country. But this time, Macron went there and he was kicked out by Hezbollah, which was humiliating for France and for Europe. Second was the question of Putin. You saw that big table, 20 meters. By the way, made in Valencia, Spain, for you to know, because the proud builder of this table went into TV. This is my table. But the image, my friends, was not good for us. It was not good for us. So, I hope, I expect that these next 5 years, he cannot be re-elected again, so no more games. And Europe needs, France is a very powerful and important country for all of us. We hope that the next 5 years he performs. No more photographs with the chest open. No. Performing for France and for Europe. We Finnish and we Spanish, we need that. Thank you.
You finalized with that most terrible view of this evening. But anyway, well, I think on humanitarian aid, pretty much was already said, and I think it is relevant to note the importance of the local, of the mayors of the cities that embraced the cause of Ukraine as their own. And I saw that Roberta referred to to Portugal. It was actually very moving to see the the immediate availability to support Ukraine in different ways, be it with goods and needed equipment, medical equipment, and so on, but also to recover people that were at the border and that didn't have any support whatsoever. So a lot of mechanisms to help these families, and we are mostly talking about a specific profile, women and children. So this was very interesting, and I think it's something that, as Henna was saying, has to be, somehow continued, because we don't know until when the war is gonna last, and so we have to create the atmosphere or the framework to keep this European feeling, if I can say, of support to Ukraine. But it's not necessary. It's not related to humanitarian aid. But I just want to bring your attention for something that is very worrying and concerns me a lot, or worries me a lot, which is the human trafficking at the borders of Ukraine. I was in Poland in March, in Łódź, which is the third largest city of the country. And they had welcomed, or by then they had welcomed already 100,000 refugees, and mostly women and children. And I had the chance to speak to the mayor of the town of Łódź, Henna, and I met some other friends from old times in YEPP who are also now at the helm of the town, and they were telling me the most terrible stories about children and women, and about lost babies from orphans and so on, to which there's no register whatsoever. They were kidnapped from orphanages in Ukraine, and there is no register of that. And at the very, very beginning of the war, the start of the war, there was a lot of human trafficking at the border. And this is something that we have to remain vigilant, and to which there has to be a coordinated approach, because the refugees from war, they need to be integrated, they need to feel welcome. There has to be a process in place that at the beginning of the war there wasn't. And this worries me, and we haven't seen a lot of pressure in the media to that. Something to keep in mind, and well, in what regards the integration, I think I kind of subscribe Roberta's words, and we should not be afraid of integration, but we have to be strategic on the integration. I don't know if we have to define, and maybe this exercise of the Conference on the Future of Europe can shed light on what has to be priority and not. For example, a review of the treaties, I don't think it's a priority. I think we have many other things to focus on accomplishing what we haven't done on the banking union, for example, and many other things, but it doesn't go necessarily with a treaty review or revision. And then lastly, on France, and then on the center right, I understand Tono's words, and I share them, but I think we also need to do our part. And I was reading about and watching some videos about the French elections, and it's very interesting and very entertaining. I think sometimes even more entertaining than the American elections, in the sense that we could see like the extreme left, led by Mélenchon, using all the innovative techniques of campaigning. He did this hologram thing, so he did this rally as a hologram. He was showing up in different cities across France at the same time. This is cool. Like, I understand why young people were kind of, oh, the guy is cool, and the message is so easy, like it's music to my ears, And then he was doing this sensed rally as well, like when he was talking about the oceans, there was the sense of the ocean. And then you look at them at the media, and people are commenting, and they waste loads of hours in the broadcasts, talking about not about the message, but about the way the man was campaigning. And this is very interesting in the sense, like, the center-right used to be the modern parties doing the different things in terms of political campaigning. At least it was like that in Portugal with my party. So we also, I'm not saying that we have to copy, because the copies are usually a bad idea, but I think it's let's make a hologram of Manfred. No, but I mean, it's interesting to see that those techniques might function, because the message, and it's a worrying message of extreme left, topics, but when we look at the polls and we look at the ages of the intention of votes, the majority of young people preferred Mélenchon, and the older generations preferred Macron. Macron, the young and fancy, showing his chest and so on. So I think this is something that we have to keep in mind and see how we can kind of find the balance between providing the content, but we have to be simple, but not being simplistic in our approach, in what we want to communicate, in the ideas we want to convey. We have to be modern, but not copying Mélenchon. I wouldn't go there. But this is something that it is in my mind, and I've been trying to read more about what we can actually do, and in our national elections, in European elections. But the time that people spend commenting on the show and not on the content of the show, it's something that we also have to keep in mind to take action.
Thank you. I think these are good words to conclude our evening, and just to comment that without good, strong content, the hologram will become a hologram. Now I will thank you. I will thank you warmly, everybody, Tono, Roberta, Henna, Lidia, for coming here and sharing your thoughts with us. And I'm sure that in 2 weeks' time in Rotterdam, the debate will be good and thoughts will be deep. I would also like to thank our viewers, as this was streamed. I think that there could have been few millions watching us, but I'm quite sure that not more than a Eurovision contest. Now, you are most welcome, and thank you for the audience for being with us, and the night will continue outside with drinks and with our reception. So, thank you, everybody.